This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so with that, we will kick off today's meeting of the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee. John, I see that you are online. I know that you're in less than optimal circumstances at the moment, location-wise. So if there's anything you need me to do, please just give me a nod.
Eric, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Good, thanks.
Okay. So with that, we'll call this meeting to order. That's okay with the chair.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, let me just explain to the other people on the call is that I am not in any dire straits, but I happen to be in the hospital today. So in order to, simplify the procedures, I've asked if Eric could run the meeting because I don't know when I might be interrupted by doctors or nurses or something. So.
All right. So with that call to order, we'll move to public comment. Hearing none, we'll move to agenda item number 3, which is regarding the approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting on May the 12th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. John?
I second, Lonnie.
All right. So the minutes are approved. So moving on to agenda item number 4, we have our comprehensive plan, budget, and targets. So I'll just go through what we're doing when this year. And just to preface this, I apologize for the formatting that you all, in the tardiness of the mailing last week. We had a bit of chaos on our end as our budget software that was custom built for us due to the way that we allocate our overhead costs came crashing down, and efforts to fix it have thus far not been successful, but we have workarounds, and we've gone back to our old way of doing things, just improved that we can. So we're now in a much better place than we were last week, but apologies. So at our first meeting in May, we talked through proposed targets and revenues, and I'll give a quick recap on that today. Then we'll spend the majority of today focused on expenses, and then we'll just kind of close the gap on where we are in terms of sustainability, so joining together those revenues versus expenses. Next meeting, we will present you with a consolidated budget. That next meeting is next Wednesday. We will come back to you with our capital expenses, or I'm sorry, our investments. We'll go through our strategic partners, then we'll look to the committee for a formal recommendation and a vote for the full board. Any questions? All right, so I'll move to a couple points that I wanted to get out of the way. So there's some assumptions and contingencies that we've built in as we were working through this budget. And obviously I did this slide before some news earlier this week and quickly updated it. So we built our budget with 2 contingencies. The first is around the passage of environmental infrastructure, which was in the governor's bill that expanded the scope of the Green Bank to allow us to finance environmental infrastructure and resiliency in the state. That bill passed the legislature on the 7th. So our scope is going to expand to cover this. So those items are no longer contingent upon that passage. We have that taken care of, and so we'll get started on planning for that. The other one is a contingency around battery storage. As you've heard us speak in prior updates, we're still waiting for Ppa to make a formal order around a program. They have indicated kind of the direction that they're heading. The legislature just passed a bill establishing battery storage targets, so We're expecting that order from Pura sometime shortly, but at this point, we still are looking at the expenses around battery storage as contingent. If that does pass, we will, or once Pura does make that order, we will be coming back to the committee and to the board to refine that budget. The budget numbers that we've built around battery storage are based on the original design that we went to Pura with. And so we need to see what exactly they're going to order. Our original program was residential in nature only. They've talked about a larger residential and commercial program. So once the details in their order are fleshed out, we can flesh out our budget even further. So with that, just to recap where we are on targets. So for the organization, we're not using the range approach that we had this year. We are going back to just regular, here's our targets. For the organization, with smaller targets overall in the past, that's just due to RCIP sunsetting. So for the organization, we're going with 4,800 projects, $167 million in capital deployed, and 48.9 megawatts of capacity installed. We believe that those projects will reduce emissions by 91,000 tons. In terms of programs, going through the financing programs, you can see that we are looking for, as the economy picks back up, we're expecting programs to ramp back up in terms of CPACE and the PPA. The PPA is indicative of pipeline that we've been building both on the municipal side and the state-supported project side. We're expecting growth in SBEA. The utilities have been heavily marketing these programs, but they've been pretty impacted by COVID, but we are growing our support for the business energy advantage through Eversource. So we expect additional projects through that. As I mentioned in our last meeting and we discussed, we're making a little bit of a strategic pivot in multifamily where we're really focused on building a pipeline around PPAs because we feel that that is a great way to deliver savings in this space and allow to concentrate our efforts on that offering. And that is becoming more and more optimal that we're seeing in terms of a lot of what's coming out around the tariffs and the incentives that are offered there. Then we have our transportation, which, while not noted here, we're still working on some numbers around what we estimate that impact will be, but our EV offset program is in the mix here. And then strategic investments. Bert has several things up his sleeve that he's working on, including some projects with fuel cell energy. In terms of the incentive business, just a reminder, we're expecting that we'll either hit the statutory limit of RCIP and then run out with the RCIP-Es in the first half of this year. There had at one point been talk of an expansion of that, and thus far, I believe, Brian, what I heard you say earlier this week is you hadn't heard anything lately on that. So we are expecting the program to sunset as expected. Right. So
yeah, it's pretty much a done deal. There was a bunch of bills that were called today. I don't think RCIP will be extended. It's pretty, you can feel pretty confident about that now.
Okay. We do have battery storage in the targets. This is the expectation of whatever program is created would start in January and would need some ramp up. And again, this is based off of the original suggestions to Pura, and so we'll see what they actually do propose, or they do order rather. Smarty is flat, or up a little bit actually year on year. And Posigen, you'll see that number is declining year on year, and that's just due to the RCIP running out. So any questions on targets before we move on to recap revenues?
Yeah, Eric, could you just repeat, I guess, if not maybe slightly expand the transportation line item?
So we launched a carbon offset pilot where we are helping to aggregate and monetize the carbon offsets created through EV charging infrastructure.
mhm.
It's a very small program at this point, but it's picking up a lot of steam. And so this
So
is just
is
of
the
that.
blank light item then just
The blank line item is that because we're still figuring out how do we count the number of projects? Are we counting the number of offsets? Are we counting the number of chargers?
Okay.
We have estimates around of the offsets. So I believe that we are going to create, I think it was 16,000 the first year, but that isn't really indicative of what it would be going forward because from what I understand, there's a bit of kind of like a backlog of these offsets that are going to get monetized the first year. So the first year number is higher than, so Matt and I've had a couple conversations on what this number should be.
Okay.
We're
So
still,
there will be numbers filled in, you're saying.
there will be numbers
We
that
just
are
don't
filled
have them
in.
right now. Yeah. Okay.
We're right.
Thank you.
So, looking at revenues year on year, you can see revenues are increasing. I like to, so just overall, the 50 million versus the 46. Sorry, I'm just trying to move my go-to out of the way so I can see numbers. That we have an increase in Regi that's due to increased proceeds from the auction. So that's both the higher clearing price and an increased number of permits. The CEF, the Clean Energy Fund, is decreasing as we do expect every year, just due to decreased demand. So energy efficiency is working. And you'll see the growth of our interest income on here, which is representative of increased investment activity. The loans that we've repurchased from Clean Fund are directly contributing to that, and our just overall activity are growing the portfolio and helping our financing programs be and make the organization more sustainable as a whole. And the other one to point out is with rec sales and Shrek sales. So our rec sales are increasing year on year, and that's due to higher rec prices in the markets that we've seen. And our Shreks are growing year on year as we have more systems come online. Any questions on revenues? All right, so let's move on to the fun part and let's talk about how we want to spend money. So we'll start with the staffing plan. And so staffing plan year on year, we're not looking to do anything drastically different. That this is basically everybody that was here coming into this fiscal year. So people that remaining, positions that are remaining. Changes that we're looking here is you see where we filled over the past year. So we filled the open positions. Right now we're proposing 2 new positions, and we're carrying over 1 that remains vacant. The first 2 are durational 1-year positions to help kind of augment the RCIP team to clear a backlog as we wind down. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done to get systems closed out and completed, and make sure all of our ducks are in a row. And we've had a bit of a backlog because we've had such high numbers of new applications coming in. So we really want to hit that backlog and clean up as much as possible as we start to transition out of the onboarding phase of the program and into the just ongoing operations. And the third is an operations assistant, which has been open for a while as we determine exactly how we want to use that. We know we need the assistance, but it's just about what exactly do we want with that position. The next section on here, we have 3 employees who are expecting to depart this year. I'm sorry, 4 employees. Celia informed of her intent to move on. Last year, Sergio has joined. Celia has kindly stayed on and helped us transition the department, but also plan for battery storage and help us with our interactions with Pura and the tariff. We have Louise, who will be transitioning to a PSA and is going to be leaving the organization and consulting with us part-time. Nick Zuba is moving on to new things, and Loyola sadly will be transitioning to retirement at some point this year. So we have these openings built into the staffing plan. In terms of new positions in here, we have the contingencies. So we have the environmental infrastructure that I mentioned earlier. That's a senior staff level position that will be focused on helping us build the programs and identifying projects that we can bring to the board to finance. And then the other three positions are battery storage related and are contingent upon that order from Pura. The other item to note on here is we are proposing an increased merit pool of 4%. And this is in line with what we're hearing from other quasi-publics and what they're doing. And this is also kind of back to where we were before the 2015 sweeps of the budget. So we used to have 4% merit pools. We obviously cut that out of necessity a couple of times, and so just where the economy is and where others are, we felt that was appropriate. Are there questions on staffing? All right.
Hey, Eric, this is John.
Hey, John.
I just want to say that I think that the 4% merit pool is a reasonable step to take, and that I don't think it will create any angst out there among out in the hinterlands. But I don't know. But I think that it's well deserved.
Well, thank you, John. All right, so if there are no other comments or questions, I'll move on to walk through the other expenses in the budget, and I'll start with the incentive programs. So overall expenses here are reflective of the wind down of the acquisition phase of the program. So as we've mentioned, we'll hit targets, but now we've got to finish processing applications, make sure we get everything buttoned up, and just kind of prepare for our ongoing asset management of the fleet and to ensure revenue production in terms of the corrects. And the main item in the budget around that is the replacement of the 3G meters. And we really need that to ensure that we're producing the maximum amount of RECs and SHRECs. And so I believe that all of you have heard about the 3G network sunsetting and the need to replace these with 5G meters. And I mean, this is a big budget line item in terms of cost, but it is absolutely necessary going forward. And we are looking at a variety of ways of doing this, that some of which could have be significantly better for our budget, but they're going to take a bit of wrangling to get everybody comfortable with it. So this number allows us to navigate towards that. So this is kind of a worst case scenario for the year, I believe. In terms of battery storage, as I mentioned, we have the new program contingent upon the Pura decision, and we will be revising that budget and back to the committee for a special meeting once there is an order. But we do choose to leave this in there because this is indicative of where our aims are, and it would allow us to start hiring a program director, and engaging consultants as we start to build out that program and help us build out the program and build out the budget. So it's budget to build out budget is some of that. Then finally, Smarty, we have a decreased budget year on year due to a decrease in projected fees for historical preservation review. The original number that was in there was quite large, and we've used a chunk of it, but not nearly all of it, and we realize that we don't need anything near that going forward. So that's why you see about a $300,000 drop there. So just looking at the incentives we intend to pay out for the year, or we're forecasting to pay out, these are all in line with everything that we're doing. It's the PBI is for RSIP, the performance-based incentives. Those are going to be ongoing for at least the next 15 or 16 years, as that's how, I'm sorry, not 15 or 16 years, I'm sorry, 6 or 7 years, systems that are coming online now, but we should be at about the peak of those now. The EPBB, the expected performance-based buy down, those will continue throughout the year, and those are the upfront incentives. And you can see the fourth quarter, we're not expecting to have any EPBB incentives. We're hoping that as the program hits its targets, we will be paying out those incentives rather soon, so that we can finish up with that. The rest of this are just small federal grants, and our grant that we've been making to Sustainable Connecticut, which has been directly linked to finding projects. This does run through the incentive programs. The projects are generally coming through on the financing program, so that does contribute to our balance sheet down the road. Questions? So moving to the financing programs. So CPACE, we have lower overall expenses. We have efficiency gains. Catherine Duncan has been doing awesome things with our billing, which is really reducing costs and increasing efficiency. We've reduced cost from our technical administrator, and we have just a slower spend on some of the evaluation, monitoring, and verification work that we had been doing. So we're continuing to do it all, but it's just at a lower cost. The PPA, operations and maintenance of $245K, is being reflected at the Green Bank in this budget. This is a little bit misleading. It's here, but we'll end up either needing to transfer the funds to Cepheid Services, where we paid this out of, and have in previous years, and it hasn't been included in the budget. I'm raising this here because it flags as a difference year on year. We just typically haven't included it, and we've had cash on hand to pay for it. We most likely will have cash on hand in the subsidiary to pay for it as well this year. There's an increased there's an increase in the PPA budget due to the share of IPC's time that's being allocated to the PPA versus other programs. And this is representative of the strategy that we presented of shifting away from multifamily specific products and really trying to grow that with the existing line product, but focusing the PPA as a tool to bring energy savings to the multifamily sector. So that brings us to the multifamily sector, where you see a reduction of $760,000 as we change our focus to the PPA. The remaining budget that is there is to support existing projects in the pipeline. So we have a couple of things that are in our targets that we think need just a little bit of hand-holding to get over the finish line. And so that's the support that we have built in for that. Questions on financing programs?
This is John Hardy again. Do you think that we could make a glossary that includes like what are the, so on this page we have And I know what most of the stuff stands for, but we have CPACE, we have EMV, we have PPA, CGB, IPC. It's really, at a certain point, I think it would be great to have a sheet that just had what all these initials and acronyms stood for.
Point noted. I could see Brian Farnan smiling. This is his pet issue. He hates acronyms, and
Loads of them.
I'm
Well,
with you,
Brian also spent a little time in the legislature and knowing how to translate this stuff when you're delivering it to colleagues and trying to bring them on board. John Garrity, you're absolutely right. And you can know it, and then, it's like Thursday, and wait, what does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, you need your cheat sheet next to you at all times.
I will, point noted, I will make sure that we spell things out where possible going forward, but I will also, we can put together a glossary.
Thank you.
So clean energy finance, so Bert's team, year on year, there's about a $75,000 increase in IPC budget. Again, I'm sorry, a $75,000 decrease in IPC budget, and that has to do with just the overall allocations on the IPC side and how that works, with the overall sum being allocated amongst the 4 programs they support. The big change in the budget here is in consulting. It's an additional $115,000. That is to reflect Louise, who will be moving in September from being on staff to being a consultant. And unfortunately, you aren't able to see the offsetting change in compensation and benefits because we weren't able to pull that in, but you will see that in the next mailing. In terms of marketing, so we've been working on a strategic shift from being more product centric to making sure that we're tying everything to our brand. We really want the goodwill that we have been building at the product level to attribute up to the brand, and that is really driving our media strategy. So we're making sure that we do have product level media efforts, but we're making sure all of that ties to the Green Bank, and we're really pushing out our what we're doing media-wise along our product line. So home solutions, building solutions, and investment solutions. And so I bring that up now because it has shifted some of the expenses from the product level up to the brand level. We are also implementing an organization-wide contractor outreach strategy. We're trying to be more proactive with contractors because we recognize that they are really in the position to be growing our programs. And so we're trying to be out there and engaging with them, listening to them, trying to provide them with whatever they need to get more projects across the finish line. And so we're making a little bit of some resource allocation changes in terms of staffing to support this. There's some budget changes here, so we're increasing budget to provide for programming here, making sure that we have the ability for people to travel and see what's going on with contractors, have regular listening sessions, so on. And then the other big change in terms of the brand level and the marketing budget is we need new assets. That a lot of what we have is stale, that our case studies are 5 or 6 years old. The technology that they're highlighting is not necessarily what we want to be highlighting. We need new photos, we need new video, and our website has been cited as not really conveying the points that we want to convey. And so we've been working this year with consultants on helping us design something that's better, and then this next year we'll look to actually replace it and implement those recommendations. In terms of product level marketing, there's an increase of about $113K for the CI&I budget, and that's an increase in what we're doing for Solar Map, the Marketplace Assistance Program for the towns and the state. And that's just direct, that we're basically paying our concierge service to get these projects over and help them apply for the ZREX, help them get everything sited and built, identify developers, the whole gamut. And that's the easiest way I think we have in terms of getting a project to fruition, is just through that channel. And so from my perspective, it's money very well spent. The other item here is we have an additional line item where we're looking to use energy audits to identify, or to work with building owners to help identify energy efficiency projects. In the Resi budget, we have a decreased overall expense just due to the moving of the media costs up to the brand. But we've added in some new expenses to support LMI outreach. So we really have, as you all are aware, we've set targets specifically for reaching vulnerable communities. We've been working on figuring out how do we grow Smarty and LMI communities for a while. And so we've specifically set aside some budget to help us do that. Multifamily marketing is now being supported through the CNI marketing, as it's the PPA is the product. And then the other big change here is we do have a budget for battery storage marketing and making sure that we can support the rollout of that.
Hey, Eric. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Just want to say on the general operations, I think that those are really smart moves. Congratulate you on working internally and with some consultants on that. I guess my comment is, to the extent you can measure the effectiveness of this shift, not only be helpful for green bank purposes, but I'm thinking of in like the joint committee perspective. I think there's there may be some lessons learned that could be helpful for the CLM group, the Energy Efficiency Fund folks. Both in terms of, if you can demonstrate, whatever we do with the website and how that's, improved its utility and use. And I don't know to what extent we can measure these things, but I think I think these are great priorities to work toward, and maybe something to think about in terms of sharing with the energy efficiency fund, not necessarily right out of the gate, but
Absolutely, and
yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. So we have done some market research around this in terms of just general brand awareness. That I'm excited to see. We're committed to doing this on an annual basis, just to kind of track how this is changing over time. And so I'll be excited to see how that changes a year from now. So we did an original market research study about 18 months ago. We're refreshing that now, as we've had a couple years of just being in market as a brand, and now that we're more formalizing the strategy and going forward, we're going to continue to do this. So I'll be curious to see how that is going forward. In terms of working with the joint committee and just Energize CT, I know we've looked at that website a lot, and I know that they're going through a bit of a redesign at the moment, and our team has been involved in pieces of that, and so we can't wait to work with them going forward on this. I think that we're both going to have much better websites in about six to 9 months, assuming they're on the same timeline we are. So
that's great.
And then in terms of the consultant that we chose to do this work, we actually engaged a group called Stark Raving out of Massachusetts, who are, they did some great work for the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, CEC. They have
Stark Raving, is that their name? Stark Raving?
That is their name.
Oh, I would have hired them just based on that alone. I wouldn't have had to look at anything else.
But that was the greatest thing about the marketing RFP is some of these groups just had awesome names. Yeah, we're really excited at what we think that they can deliver for us. So, and then just kind of in terms of, I'll call it the aesthetic and the approach that we're coming at with some of the marketing. We have give you guys a glimpse of our new office. You can see our external branding here in Hartford, and then just kind of our open space below that with our visuals in the background of clean energy. And then you see to the right, 4 of our conference rooms where we're really looking to spotlight some individuals who've had an important role in clean energy history in Connecticut. So you have the Freeman Room that we created, which is after the Freeman sisters, who were integral members of the Underground Railroad, whose house in Bridgeport is now part of an environmental justice community. You have Bernard Baker, the father of the fuel cell in the top right. You have Colonel Alfred Pope, the Hartford industrialist who was manufacturing bicycles and electric cars in the early 1900s. And then I'm sure you all will recognize Gina McCarthy in the bottom right. So yeah, we're looking for ways that we can tie their stories to help us continue to tell our story and be part of our branding and marketing.
Eric, this is Brian. If I could just provide some context here. So we're trying to think of a way to both combine our branding efforts in marketing that Eric has been talking about to get the Green Bank out there, along with our culture of the organization. So these rooms very much inspire our staff and team, right? It surrounds them with people who have moved the market and done something important for the state of Connecticut, and it's represent it. So we're trying to think of a way, a documentary, maybe there are other social things that we can do, communication things that we can do that communicate both, or that tie the Green Bank brand to the innovation and the history of clean energy innovation in Connecticut. So I think, Eric, when you say we've got like I don't know if it's a hole in the marketing budget or like something to think through in terms of documentaries.
Yeah, we at the moment it's a hole, but I need to think about a way to put in a placeholder, or not a placeholder, but to fill that hole as a placeholder as we think through what is actually necessary there.
Yeah, Brian, it's Eric. I think that's a good idea to blend in with the marketing stuff. I would just be very careful about putting together anything that would come across as political. I think the historic component is a great one, and certainly the building you're in now perfectly reflects that. I would just be careful about making sure we try and stay away from anything that could be construed as a political message.
I agree, and I think that there are ways to do that with focusing on certain stories here as opposed to others is a good way, or prioritizing a couple over others is a good way to make sure that happens.
And just to kind of add, like, I guess you probably don't get in these kind of positions of history without being political to some degree, right? I mean, Bernard Baker is the founder of Fuel Cell Energy, and fuel cells have their contention, right? But yet we are showing a renewable hydrogen future, a green economy future, where we envision one day renewable hydrogen powering fuel cells. That is the renewable hydrogen economy. But there are issues around natural gas. So we're kind of raising the question and the point when people come in the room. Albert Pope, Teddy Roosevelt, rode in his vehicles, right? So, you got the square deal and everything around the square deal with Teddy Roosevelt. And of course, Gina McCarthy, our hearts out for Gina, like she is our modern day hero. I would say the Freeman sisters with the Underground Railroad and environmental justice, Justice 40 is very much front and center right now in terms of equity. So they all have their tones of politics, but I take your point, Eric, just in terms of navigating those carefully. And I've always felt like we've been bipartisan in our approach. So we just need to be conscious of political sensitivities.
I think too, as someone who makes documentaries, we LLC all of our documentaries. So we turn them into separate projects. You can actually divorce them from other things that are going on. And that's a really good thing, because you can invite in private investment the way we do for green energy investment. And there's nothing that motivates people like a well-told story, and it can go in a million different venues, and it can be seen on demand, and it can propel in the Freeman houses. I mean, that whole story is so remarkable, that we talk about Tulsa, and right in Bridgeport in Connecticut, we had a thriving free Black community, and also Native Americans, and working in shipping and maritime work. And so there was a hotel, and it was very, there was wealthy people came, including a lot of free Blacks. That's where they came to, invest and to enjoy and all of that. And that story has never really been told. And there are people in Bridgeport who are trying to tell the story. And that's really, and now with the coal plant, finally, but that's still an issue. Who's going to pay to remove it, and what's going to go there? And that's right around where this community was. So I think there's an opportunity to bring in private investment who'd be very interested in doing this, LLC it, separate it, but also have it be part of, what it is, it's an amazing, perfect combination. It's an energy story. It's a human rights story. It's a social justice story. It's a public health story. We've just made racism a public health crisis in the state. And that one story, right there tells all of it. And there's so many people eager to do that. And I think, you'd even can bring in somebody to kind of be the host, a well-known person might be able to come in to do that. They would be really intrigued to do that. And then that expands also our reach and our ability to really get people emotionally ginned up. So we were talking earlier when John Harity said, all the damn acronyms. That's how energy gets discussed so often. And we lose so many people who could get really excited about what we're doing, the way we are, by telling the stories that way. So, I think it would be great if we could make something happen.
Awesome.
So Eric, I think what we can do, Eric, is maybe think about a placeholder. We'll come back to the B&O next at the third meeting, but we should think about it from this public-private notion that Lonnie is talking about, meaning use some of our budget as a way to attract others to fund it, so that we use our model to leverage and get other people in. So let's put our heads together and think about how we might, encourage that step up to whatever a budget.
Awesome. I like the idea of bringing the green bank model to filmmaking. So, cool. So moving on to research and development. So what are the areas that we really need to, not need to, but are going to continue to innovate in this space? We have renewable heating and cooling that's ongoing monitoring, which we've been doing for the past couple of years. We're going to continue with that. We have money for environmental infrastructure, which is to support that expanded mission and help think through and build out those programs. And then we have the job study that we're going to continue on to a new piece with the Energy Efficiency Board. Moving on to just overall other operating expenses. You see a slight increase year on year of about $150,000 here. That's reflective of just a couple things. I mean, we've trimmed some costs in parts of our IT operations. We've seen some increases there, primarily due to needing more licensing across the board for a couple pieces of software. We have increased expenses with staff development and continuing education. Primarily $80,000 of that is to support the student loan assistance that the B&O committee supported at the previous meeting, that we're still working with ACG on, the Audit, Compliance, and Governance Committee, in terms of making their recommendation to the board. And then we have some slight increases in terms of subscriptions. And the other big driver here is insurance. And we're facing really tight insurance markets. And every time we've gone back for a policy renewal this year, it's been significantly more expensive than we would have hoped. We're hopeful that that won't stay for forever, but we are going to have to pay more this year for insurance. And I mean, that's just reflective of either competition or lack thereof in those markets, or increased risk in terms of things like cybersecurity. In terms of capital expenses, you'll see a significant decrease in capital expenses. This is because we had our move this year. We've basically spent all that we can on this now. We're hoping this is done, or I'm hoping this is done and over. And we don't expect to face those expenses again this next year. Any questions on expenses before we head into sustainability?
Eric, I had a question about, are we budgeting, and maybe I missed it, are we budgeting for any kind of campaign around heat pumps for residential use?
So we haven't broken out what campaigns we're going to do where for Smarty. For the year, and that's just basically because we're bringing Stark Raving, our new marketing agency, up to speed. I just had that call about an hour ago, kind of walking them through what we had done and with whom, where, and what exists. I imagine there will be some advertising that supports and pushes that. In terms of special offers, we have an ongoing special offer right now on heat pumps that I believe will run. It's going to continue until the money runs out, and the money, I think, will probably run out at the end of the summer. What happens after that, I think we'll have to wait and see and kind of regroup. We hadn't planned on any interest rate buy downs or any special offer related to renewable heating and cooling residentially at this point, but we can come back to the committee if we decide that we need to do that down the road.
Eric, if I could add, this is Brian, and this is a bit in Lonnie's neck of the woods. You know, some of our marketing channels, you know, beyond contractors, are you know, people in communities, everyday citizens, and in Branford, we had a group of citizens who, through the community match fund, You might all know that we have a part of our marketing budget to support Sustainable Connecticut that helps us reach municipalities to support the power purchase agreement and help them reduce their energy costs. Another part of that is a small contribution that goes to a community match pool where local citizens create projects. The projects are consistent with our mission. They raise money to support those projects, and then we match them. There was a project specifically, John, in Branford, modeled around home energy solutions, heat pumps, and solar PV done by some clean energy advocates, really good ones. They've been around for a while. So the idea is, to your point, Eric Brown, is to kind of take that data as a baseline in terms of how well they did. I'm pretty sure they did really well. You know, community-based customer acquisition does really well. We all know it. We've seen it for years, Solarize, clean energy communities and the like. And we've put in this budget a $25,000 increase to sustainable CT to specifically replicate that model. So if they want to, those groups of citizens want to take it to another town to leverage and to double it by raising money from citizens and run a campaign, they can do that, and we'll capture all the data from doing it. And my gut tells me, Eric, that we will see much better customer acquisition by people talking to people than you know, what we might generally see.
Yeah, I guess this is John again. I would just add that I think that heat pumps, you know, they're kind of pricey, but they're a really important part of the mix of how to get carbon reduced. And but they're also hard to understand. Like I've sat in a number of presentations by contractors and really didn't quite get it all when they were explaining it. So I think there's two things. One is that anything that's like a little difficult to understand but is really important, it will require a lot of messaging. And I think that the heat pumps are worth it in terms of, you know, New England, especially getting away from home heating oil would be a remarkable step. So I hope that we can find ways to prioritize it.
Agreed, John. And it's like, you know, I think it is the second largest greenhouse gas emission reduction wedge for Connecticut is decarbonizing how we heat our buildings. So yeah, and the targets are really extensive. They're in the hundreds of thousands, and the programs are struggling. The incentive programs are struggling. So more knowledge and awareness will go a long way to get that growth moving in the right direction. You know, we have heat pumps here at our office. We're learning from them. We're also beyond the air source heat pumps that we all are talking about. There are also ground source heat pumps, and part of the other R&D budget item was research around ground source heat pumps. We're actually metering ground source heat pumps that we've been financing through Smarty. So we've been giving customers free metering so that we could actually see how those systems are producing and saving. We haven't had that data in the past. So we'll actually have some data to be able to speak to customers in the future about how ground source heat pumps are saving people money for those who are, you know, changing out the oil boilers, or excuse me, furnaces with ground source heat pumps. So yeah, it's a huge wedge. We've got to get the awareness up. We've got to put the incentives and financing in place to get things moving. And big jobs. I mean, I think the jobs, the direct jobs per, you know, $1 million of investment are amongst the highest in that segment of the market.
This is Lonnie. I just wanted to mention too, I'm just thinking of marketing, and Eric, you may already know this, but we are doubling the size of our animal shelter, and we're greening our animal shelter. So the animal's been removed from it. There's a little bit of controversy because construction costs are spiking. The pandemic has created you know, spikes in how much they thought it was going to cost, but it's going to be fully, I think zero carbon. I think that's what they're going for. And I'm just thinking puppies and kittens and little gerbils. And I mean, I'm just thinking all the great lovable marketing photos we could pull together as they move back in to their new green animal shelter.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, let me talk to the team. I'd love to figure out a way that we could take advantage of that, for lack of a better, make sure that we capture something from that.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Now you don't want to lose that opportunity. And the first selectman, you did a webinar involving him recently, and the animal shelter was named after his grandfather,
Oh,
and
cool.
who rescued animals who just on his own and found new homes for them. And then they created it was really an outgrowth of something he did as a private citizen. And the head, Laura Bourbon, has it, and she's really, really very smart at this kind of stuff. So yeah, we can pull that together. That'd be great.
Oh, certainly.
Lonnie, you're reminding me, Lonnie, of the Nissan commercial, the car commercial with the golden retrievers and the dog and the puppy, who kind of pulls his paw down to the I think the boxer who's in the diesel truck driving next to it, and the boxer honks his horn, and it's all to make an emotional connection for the viewer that little puppies and dogs equal buy a Nissan. You know, it's kind of, it's cute.
And of course that's advertising babies and puppies. That's been the big marketing thing forever.
Totally.
But this animal shelter, she's really remarkable, and they rescue some of the stories of animals that they've rescued and rehabilitated and found happy homes for. There was just one last year, dog almost frozen to death, and they found him and brought him into our shelter and rehabilitated him. Vets stepped in and everything, and now he's living with this happy family. You know, I mean, it's it just goes on and on and on. So yeah, it's a good. I think it's a feel good story, and it's a real good story. So that'll be great.
Cool. And I will chase up with the team and see what we can do. So any other questions or comments on expenses? All right, so moving on to sustainability. So Brian, do you want to go through this, or do you want me to kick it off?
Yeah, let me go through it. So hang that up. So just to provide some background to just kind of catch folks up on where we've been and kind of our kind of journey to where we are today. So, you know, back in FY 2018 and FY 2019, as a follow-on to the October 31st, 2017 sweeps, which directed, you know, $32.6 million over the next 2 fiscal years from the Green Bank through its administration of the Clean Energy Fund and Reggie allowance proceeds to the general fund. That December of that year was when we developed our sustainability plan to essentially restructure ourselves to one, you know, navigate ourselves out of the problem that we were dealing with, which was a cash flow problem, and then just refocus ourselves on the future, where we've got long-term structural budget deficits that that the state is looking at. So how do we think about managing ourselves in the context of what could be ongoing pressures? So some of the things that we did, you know, we cut programs and projects that we had actually approved. You know, we needed to protect cash flow. So we cut a number of anaerobic digester projects that have been approved. We're seeing those kind of sit on the sidelines today. Hopefully we can get those back and moving. We reduced operating expenses. This was a big one. We reduced the target was 27% operating expense reduction, which is a heavy hit. Part of that was reducing headcount. So we severed some staff members. We also transitioned staff members from the Green Bank to a co-funded nonprofit that we created called Inclusive Prosperity Capital, which you've heard us talk about. So we co-founded them with Deep and the Kresge Foundation, and our ability to move 8 of our staff members, really incredible staff members, to there allowed us to reduce some of our overhead. So that allowed us to reduce our operating expenses. But anyways, that led to us essentially restructuring the organization into 3 parts. which are pretty common today. You know, we set our agenda, our board agenda around incentive programs, financing programs, and committees. So it's become pretty common, but it wasn't that way before the sweeps. So we've really had to define who we are, what we run, and why. The incentive programs, you know, we administer the residential solar investment program that was statutorily required for us to administer. The challenge of that program at the time was that, as you see from the budget, they chew through cash quite quickly. I think our budget this year is $11 million. So, you know, it will chew right through cash. So if you're not managing your cash flow, you can get eaten up by not having access to, you know, by the greater than 50% reduction in public resources that we received. So what we ended up having to do was to monetize the value of those solar home renewable energy credits and find a near-term fix. Bert was able to establish what we call warehouses or lines of credit with Webster Bank and Liberty Bank that would provide us access today to cash that we could tap if we needed it. And then as we did all the work around our bonding, we would be able to issue bonds, recover that money over a 15-year period through the present value of those bonds, or a portion of it. We'd be able to pay down the warehouse, and then we'd have a long-term source of capital to get us through the program. So we did a lot on the incentive programs to manage that cash flow because it had a huge impact on us. And the bond structure that we've now set up is a result of that strategy. And that strategy is what we call a cost recovery strategy, because we're able to sell the renewable energy credits that are generated from these systems to the utilities at a price that we set. We set it at a price that's actually very competitive to the Class 1 RPS, the alternative compliance payment. It's actually much cheaper than the ZREC program. So we get more bang for the buck out of this program. And the challenge is that the cash flow comes over time. So by us being able to cost recover and sell to the utilities and issue warehouses and securitizations, we're able to better manage our cash. That was a key thing to get through that period of time. Financing programs is kind of what people think about when they think about the Green Bank, right? We utilize the System Benefit Fund and RGGI funds to finance projects for end-use consumers. We hadn't focused historically pre-sweeps on an investment return strategy, but because of the sweeps, we had to then focus on moving away from our priority being leveraging ratepayer funds to a priority being our organization's sustainability. So we established a weighted average return of 5% over a 10-year term, which you all will see next time we meet is our investment portfolio proposal. And what's important there is that over time, the interest income that is produced from those loans and those financings, over time, as we continue to diligently invest those resources, the interest income then covers our operating expense. So I'm going to show you a few ratios after this slide to show you the progress we're making towards that end. So this is a business unit where the interest income over time is going to help us break even by covering our operating expenses. And then we co-founded a nonprofit, Inclusive Prosperity Capital. We transitioned exceptional staff there that enabled us to reduce our overhead in our operating expense. But they also carry forward our mission, specifically our mission around low to moderate income families and vulnerable communities. So Eric has been hinting at us refocusing that effort with IPC around solar PPA. The reason that's important is because we had really good success this legislative session in getting a major affordable housing bill for solar passed. So we think this is going to enable us to really deliver returns for that segment. And you also might remember that we lost a lot of foundation and investor interest in us. And by creating this nonprofit, we were able to save that investment from the Kresge Foundation and others. And we've got some things that we want to report next week. IPC is doing great. COVID has had a devastating impact on them. It slowed them down, but we've got some really good results in terms of where they are raising some foundation investment. So we'll come back to that next week. But let's go to the next slide. So we've been kind of breaking down the numbers to take a look at some ratios. If you think of earned revenues, what does the Green Bank earn? You know, we don't earn revenues through the Clean Energy Fund or Reggie allowance proceeds. You know, those are public resources that have been set aside for us to support our mission. We earn revenues through all the other things that we do. We generate interest income, we generate fees, we monetize ZRECs. Earned revenues is something that we're tracking for our financing programs. And when you compare earned revenues to a ratio of our operating expenses, you get a sense of if it is greater than 1, then what that is saying is your earned revenues are supporting that element of operating expenses. So you can see from this slide, starting in FY18, which was the budget we were in coming out of the sweeps, that through FY20, we're still working on this current fiscal year. I suspect those are going to go up, continue to go up. But what you can see with the staffing sustainability ratio, this is a ratio where we look at the earned revenues to the personnel related OPEX, our people, right? So to the extent we are raising revenues that's covering our people, that's a ratio that we're looking at, and we're doing great. We're at greater than 1 there. The second one is program sustainability. So it looks at earned revenues to our total operating expenses. So not only personnel related operating expenses, but non-personnel related operating expenses. Our consultants, all those other things that are below the personnel line item are in that, except we do net out our pension and Opeb expenses, which are, what would we call them, Jane? Unrealized expenses. They're kind of obligations for us to report. So we net that out, but you can see that we're making progress on program sustainability, and where you can see us, adding in or taking out pension or Opeb are the next 2 stretch targets. But Jane, anything just to bring more clarity on the pension and the Opeb?
Yeah, with the implementation of a couple of government accounting standards, we had to bring the liabilities for the pension and the Opebs, which are the post-employment health benefits, onto our balance sheet. And the state runs through an actuarial valuation, and then they do an allocation, and they give it to the separate business units that do their reporting separately. And we do the entries to pull those onto our balance sheet. I personally don't believe it has much basis in terms of what we will pay out given the level of staffing that we have, but each of them runs in the probably $20 to $25 million, which seems ridiculous for a staff of less than 50 people. So it's more of just making sure that the accounting is pushed down to the appropriate business units within the state of Connecticut, and it is supported by an actuarial valuation and allocation. However, for us, we don't have any say in what we're given, and we have no control over that expense, and it actually is not costing us any cash as well. So I would look at it similar to the way that Brian looks at the system benefit charge and the Reggie funds. We get those things because we live and breathe, not because we have any control over them.
Great. So we're looking at these ratios. We're still, Jane and I, Eric, Bert, we're taking a look at them. We're fine tuning them. These have become our barometers for progress on the sustainability plan that the board approved in December of 2017. Next week, you will see a memo where we're going to update the board on the progress on sustainability, where we're going to go through detail kind of in each section, the incentive business, the financing business, our support of IPC, the nonprofit. So you will see that in a memo. And what we are setting the context for, setting the stage for, is continuing our commitment to supporting the nonprofit Inclusive Prosperity Capital. We have lost a year, they have lost, well, we've all lost a year and a half given COVID. They were making substantial progress. COVID hit, that slowed down their fundraise. They lost a few staff members. So by us continuing our activity with them, we're going to continue to deliver on our mission and continue to help them navigate this and get to a point to where we need them to be, which is sustainable, just like us. We're working hard on putting all these numbers together on sustainability to show you that we've made good progress. Let's continue what we've been doing while at the same time helping IPC become sustainable too. I don't know if Eric, you wanted to add anything there?
No, the only thing I would add to that is just that with our current relationship with IPC, I mean, they really are integral to the delivery of several of our programs, and so it really behooves our mission to help them get to sustainability as well.
So stay tuned for the memo. We'll go through it again. Eric, if I could ask next time, just give me a little time to go through it again. I'd like to get the committee's feedback on the memo because it's an important tracker of the progress we've made and the commitment that we made back in December of 2017. I feel really good about it. We've executed on all three areas, and it's really, kind of stay the course, stay committed, keep support for IPC, and we're going to get there. Again, sorry, one more thing I would add is for those of you who recall at the time, there was a big discussion and disagreement of the board members in terms of how they felt the future would look with regards to the system benefit funds. There were board members who felt that they were going to continue to be swept, and there were board members who felt that the law would go back to what it was and there to be no sweeps. We've worked really hard with Governor Lamont. We've worked really hard with the Connecticut General Assembly to ensure the bipartisan nature of what we're doing here. And knock on wood, the budget things are broadly coming around, and no one is looking at sweeps. So we're the best case scenario that we had laid out is where we're heading. So just continue to support our loan and financing programs, and that interest income will continue to increase and get us to a point at which it's covering our operating expenses. That's it. That's all I have.
So as we wrap up today, or at least we wrap up what we have prepared, are there any other questions or concerns or any items that you guys would like more information on as we prep for next week?
I just have kind of a procedural question. The meeting next week, can you just sort of give us, because I have a difficult conflict to avoid next week. What's the function of next week's meeting versus today's meeting?
Next week is the actual vote on the and the recommendation to the committee. So that'll have the consolidated budget, and ideally the committee will be making that recommendation to the board.
Okay, thanks.
So in terms of, so did I hear you correctly that you have a conflict next week?
Yeah, I actually have another board meeting. So we can talk offline about how to, take care of my vote, whether it's by proxy or some other method.
Okay, we'll I'll reach out to you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions or concerns, John, Madam Chair? Okay.
No,
Well,
I'm sorry, Lonnie. Go ahead.
no, sorry, that was me mumbling. Go ahead.
Well,
No, John, it's all you. Go.
oh man, well, it's not much of me then. I was just gonna say, it's just been remarkable that we've been able to transform ourselves into this sustainable model. And, I think that the balance, as was pointed out when we headed this way, is to be sustainable, but not so sustainable that people don't think that we need to be supported, or that we're just another entity in the marketplace. So, the way I see the bank's success going is that where we have success and we feel we can let something go, that then we head to the next thing, and we're always continuing to drive climate change solutions forward in that way. So, and I think that's what we're doing. So it's a great work by the alchemist in the Green Bank shop.
Well, thank you, John. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, so moved. And I just want to say, John, whatever you're in the hospital for, feel better and get out.
Oh yeah, no, I will. And thank you. And I will second the motion.
Well, thank
So all
you.
those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? You may stay here and go to meeting if you want.